1.2 million Ugandans, the majority of them being youth. With more than 45,000 registered members, the retreat also attracted stakeholders like the National Social Security Fund, which encouraged riders to enhance savings and long-term economic empowerment. However, tensions rose after the shocking revelation of misappropriated funds, prompting a stem warning from the Chief Coordinator of Operation Wealth Creation, General Salim Saleh. General Salim Saleh visibly was concerned and called for healing and reform in the border industry, urging stakeholders to adopt transparency and responsible leadership to support Uganda's economic development. The sector boasts of over 1.2 million riders, including university graduates, a shift from its former perception as a refuge for the uneducated. Finally, from the local scene, President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni is scheduled to commission a new coffee processing plant in Ntungamo district, a facility expected to significantly boost coffee production and quality in Greater Ankole and across Uganda. The National Vice Chairman of the Patriotic League of Uganda, Michael Muwagira Toyota, said that the president will officially open the Inspire Africa Coffee Factory on the 24th of May this year. Inspire Africa Coffee Factory, located in Rashamire, Ntungamo district, is set for commissioning by the president. The national vice chairperson emphasized that. He described
to each talk about themselves in detail, what they do and how many hats they wear. Good morning, ladies.
Good morning.
And I'll start with Professor Laura.
Hi, good morning, and good morning, Uganda. My name is Professor Laura Serrant. I am a professor of community and public health nursing. I'm also the chair on the board of the Sheffield Children's Hospital, which is in the middle of England. And you can tell from my accent,
Yes,
I am
surely.
not Ugandan.
Surely, indeed. Over to you, ma'am.
Good morning, Uganda. I'm Dorothy Gashuga, a graduate midwife. I'm privileged to be here, and thank you for having me this morning. I'm a graduate midwife with about 14 years of experience in supporting women and their families through the childbearing process, and I'm so passionate about supporting individuals during the childbearing process, advocating for safe and respectful maternity care, and also training the new generation of midwives. Thank you.
Profound. Over to you, Elizabeth.
Good morning.
Good
And
morning.
good morning, Uganda. Musibire Muta. My name is Elizabeth Pearson. I'm a proud diaspora Ugandan nurse and lecturer in nursing. I am based in the United Kingdom. I have a couple of hats on. I'm also the co-chair of the Mary Seco Trust, which is an organization that looks at supporting and highlighting and promoting the works of various healthcare professionals who are often marginalized. I'm also the director of Diaspora Uganda Nurses and Midwives Society, an organization I set up to look at enhancing competencies and skills for our colleagues in the healthcare sector.
Right. Now, if you want to be part of this conversation, 0709-602-592, that is a WhatsApp number to which you can send your question, your idea, your opinion as we speak to these three powerful ladies. And I'll start with Professor Laura. What is the significance of International Midwives and Nurses Day and the whole week?
Thank you. I don't think we can underestimate the importance of this week for nurses and midwives globally. Nursing is the only real, true global profession. In every country of the world, irrespective of GDP, from the poorest to the richest, there are nurses and midwives. Not even every country has teachers, etc. So the importance of us recognizing how much nursing and midwifery adds to global health, to global policy, and just to simply people's ability to live well can't be overestimated. And certainly here in Uganda, as we will be celebrating later today, you have very strong, proud history of nurses who've contributed to health, to policy, to education, and to research. And I think if we think about the World Health Organization, we think about the Sustainable Development Goals, we think about the global community of making us all better, that nursing is central to that. Dr. Tedros, who is actually the head of the World Health Organization, said there is no way that we can actually achieve what we want to achieve in the Sustainable Development Goals without nurses. That is how important this is.
Oh, very profound. Now, let me head over to you, Elizabeth. In your perspective, what is the status of nursing globally?
Before I answer that, there's
Yes.
something I really want to say
Yes,
in terms
please.
of the leadership we have on this desk.
Okay.
Professor Laura Serrant has a title called CBE, meaning she's a commander in the British Empire, which is the highest ranking office. She's here as a professor in nursing, and she has done quite a lot of work, extensive, an author of over 100 books and articles. When I was in school, in my university, and I was doing my assignments, I would reference some of the work that Professor Laura had done and completed. Not only did I know that I would meet her in person, but to actually learn from her straight from her mouth. So in terms of my perspective as a diaspora healthcare professional, is understanding the contribution we can make, the expertise, the exposure in terms of learning. Nursing, as Professor Laura has stated, we have over 100 fields in nursing, in specializations. And as diaspora, we have been privileged, I may say, to be able to work in the spaces of specialization. So some of the work I do in the association is to enhance that and promote specialization, because I'm a nurse lecturer. I've only come into academia. I love wounds, so I'd be a wound care specialist nurse. Wow. Absolutely. If you have a chiwundu, bring it to me, and I'll help you see it to the process of healing. We have diabetic specialist nurses, mental health nurses, and the list goes on. So understanding and supporting the diaspora to come and help enhance the different specialist skills for our healthcare system is something that I'm really passionate about. And that's where my perspective would lie.
Very profound. And that would bring me to ask the question why we need specialist nurses in Uganda. But I'm going to ask it at two fronts, starting with Dr. Laura, and then the other will go to Dorothy. For Dr. Laura, on the front of benchmarking, why do we need specialist nurses? Why do you think we need specialist nurses in Uganda?
I think Uganda has a strong history of care and a strong history of making life better for its peoples. And nursing is central to that. But as the world has developed and as healthcare has developed, people live with their conditions more than die of them, thankfully. And that means that people need care, information and support. It's not always about curing a particular disease. Now, specialist nurses actually recognize the importance of using evidence, of using research and using the latest techniques to help people live longer and better. And Uganda, like all other countries of the world, developed specialist nurses to help care for and support their individuals and their families in the community. So I think specialist nurses, which exist all over the world, Uganda takes its place quite rightly within the world space of specialisms in nursing. I have to say that I'm always a little questioning as to why people think, do we need specialist nurses? We don't question whether we need a specialist doctor. If you want an operation, you don't want to go to a gynecologist, you want a surgeon. So if you want care within a specialist condition, why would you not want a specialist nurse or a specialist midwife to look after you in those situations?
Right. And the Professor Laura has, talked about, has painted a picture given Uganda's population, which comes to, coming to you, Dorothy. Why do you think we need specialist nurses? But now painting the perspective from the population demand in Uganda?
Thank you so much. So Uganda faces a shortage of specialist nurses and midwives. At present, we actually have the general and nurses midwives forming the bulk of the nursing workforce. As of 2022, we had about 158,000 healthcare professions, and of which 109,000 of these were actually nurses and midwives, which is the biggest number. So among these, actually, those are more of the general nurses, and we're not talking about the specialist nurses. The ratio of nurses to the patients is actually 1 to 11,000 in Uganda, which is very low compared to the World Health Organization recommended ratio of about 1 to 1,000. So it means one nurse is actually taking care of about 11,000 people, which is actually a big number and affects the quality of care which is given. It's from this that we actually come up with the perspective of saying, yeah, we actually need to have more specialty nurses on board. So at present, we actually have some of the existing specialists. We have pediatric nurses, we have mental health nurses, we have midwives who stand out actually and run most of the lower health facilities. We also have critical care nurses. However, there is a pronounced need to have more specialties in areas like neonatology, like neonatal nursing. We also need more specialists in oncology, MFM nursing, that is maternal fetal nurses, and also geriatric nursing. Because at present we have babies who are really born with extreme prematurity, and then they are all over the world. They are in the regional referrals. However, most of these specialists are mostly in the central region. Like, they can easily have to say refer a baby from I don't know how many kilometers to a specialized hospital in a NICU. Yet, if we actually empowered all the other NICUs around the regional referrals and have specialists, nurses there, then it could help manage and offer the services which are required.
Profound. We are commemorating the International Midwives and Nurses Week. The particular day was 5th May, but it's a whole week of commemorating nurses and midwives. That is why I have a panel of powerful ladies speaking into this matter. 07096022592 is the WhatsApp number to which you can share your comment, your opinion, or your question. Now, I will ask about inspiring stories to all of you, because you all have different experiences and perspectives. But I'll start with Professor Laura. Highlight some of the inspiring stories that you have experienced throughout the journey of your career.
Well, I probably should start by saying that I have been in nursing for 44 years. I started my training in 1982, when possibly you and many people listening may not have even been born. And I think there were two highlights I want to highlight for you. The first one is that the first pandemic that I lived and worked through was the AIDS pandemic. And we know the impact that had not only across Africa, but also across the world. And so I started my nursing before we had even isolated the HIV virus. We didn't even know the name of it. And one of the things that I learned the most in that time was how much the other aspects of health, poverty, where people live, whether you had enough food, stigma, actually impacted health so much. And that's what inspired my interest in public health nursing. How do we prevent people getting ill? How do we reduce the burden of health in that space? And how do we support people when they are living with very frightening areas? And the second thing that I would highlight is in 2024, as Elizabeth identified, last year I was awarded a CBE by King Charles III. And that was really important because it was for services to nursing and health policy. And what it signified for me wasn't just a personal benefit, but also the recognition of how nurses and nursing work really influences health for everybody, how it really influences our policy, how it really influences saving money for organisations, for communities, because the cost of ill health is so high.
It is.
And the impact is so much more than the individual. So in my 44 years, they're probably the two things I would highlight. COVID was not my first pandemic. Hopefully, I won't see another one.
How did you maneuver through that one, given the experience you had had with the AIDS pandemic?
I think one of the things that I learned, and we were talking about this earlier this week, is that irrespective of the health condition that triggers a global pandemic, there are many similarities in how people feel and what's required. The fear when the unknown is huge. And I think as much as treating and pursuing a medical answer, there's something about people looking to their leaders, their community for reassurance, for comfort. And what, as a nurse, one of the things is that when you are in a medical field, you cannot hide. There was no option for nurses or midwives or doctors or to stay at home, because we are in an infinite profession. Every day people are born, people are sick, people die. Tomorrow the cycle starts again. So the pandemic taught me the importance of being clear, living well, but also the importance of a whole community and a system coming together to support everybody.
Very profound indeed. And now let me move to Dorothy. Dorothy, what highlights some of your inspiring stories given your experience and the field that you operate?
Okay, thank you so much. I must say I feel lucky that I'm doing one of the most satisfying professions. Imagine spending the 14 years of my life caring for women and seeing them smile when they have their children, that first cry, that's the joy that fills me every time I care for a mother, for a family, and then they have this outcome and you're all celebrating, yeah? So I've worked in a health center for the past 13 years, and I've cared for very many mothers, very many families, very many babies. So I must say, to me, that is the most satisfying thing I get from caring for the women, but also mentoring the new generation of midwives. We all know we have a lot of new generation and a lot has changed. Previously we had these mentorships, but then we really need to continue sharing the knowledge and skills with the new generation so that we have this continuum of care and making sure that the women continue to have respectful maternity care and they always feel safe with us. So to me, that is something that I'm really so passionate about and I enjoy doing.
Have you met some of the babies you've helped deliver?
Yes, please. Most of them. Actually, sometimes you meet the mothers. Yeah. You might even have forgotten that you actually help them give birth because we serve a very big population. Yeah, sure. So most of the time you will most likely forget, but then they will quickly come to you and they'll be like, oh, look at your daughter, look at your son. And then you really feel proud of yourself that you're actually contributing.
Yes, you were there in the first minutes of their life on earth. Yeah. Interesting. Elizabeth, what has been share some of your highlights, inspiring stories that you've experienced in your career?
I have a couple.
Please.
You know, in Uganda, I grew up in Uganda, and my mom, I'm actually a third generation nurse. Hi, mommy. And I would go to hospital, be around hospital, you know, environment, university, etc. But I never had the experience. I mean, my dad even was sick at one time, admitted in Mulago. But I would go as a relative, a daughter, etc. And then I got an opportunity to come back to Uganda because of the work I wanted to do and volunteer professionally for 6 months in one of our regional referral hospitals. And walking in, not as a relative, but as a staff who is supporting in 2019, before the pandemic, yeah, sure, has really blessed and opened my, you know, perspective of the challenges that my colleagues face here in Uganda. And I still hold that 6 months very, very valuable because I walked in and looked at our healthcare system in a different view and appreciated actually what our nurses and midwives offer in terms of the restrictions, the beautiful stories like Dorothy has shared, the challenges, and also the achievements. And then the other, because of the association that I run, being invited to Buckingham Palace and meeting His now Majesty, but Prince Charles, in 2021. That as well was a highlight because he appreciated the contribution of the Commonwealth diaspora healthcare professionals, and not just once but twice. So I think those would be my highlights.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I will stay with you given your 6 months experience that laid a foundation for you. What do you think is next for Uganda? What do we need to do to be better in the field of nursing and midwifery?
Wow, that's a huge question. But I must start that we're doing really well. If you look at different aspects in terms of leadership, clinical practice, research, we are actually doing very well. I've been blessed to be in certain conversations. But I believe what we need more is to see how we can advocate for more of our unemployed nurses and midwives to be filtered through into the system. In the United Kingdom, we are 50,000 nurses short.
Wow.
Minus talking about the midwives.
Wow.
For nursing alone. And in Uganda, we have quite a lot of unemployed, qualified nurses and midwives. And appreciating the value they can bring in would be helpful. So my thoughts would be surrounding the policy development of the patient ratio that Dorothy has shared, in terms of having one midwife serving 11,000 people. That's actually impossible. And so understanding how can our policymakers look at enhancing the budget, the constraints, whatever it may be, and getting all these qualified colleagues into the system to manage the care that we have, because we are living longer. We have so many, population experiencing long-term conditions. They need to be managed in community, like Professor Laura has said. That would reduce the burden on the hospital bed, hence the specialization. But also, as an individual, you're bringing value to the the community, the society, the economy. It's valuable. I love my job, and the vast stuff that I've been able to do. Maybe if I was in another profession, I would be narrowed in one pathway.
Right.
But I've been able to do so much. So looking at how the policy maybe can be developed to employ more of our colleagues who have qualified into our systems would be my hope.
Yes.
Yes.
Now I'll pose it to Dorothy, who's actually practicing here on a daily, 13 years at Health Center 4. That means there's a different experience that you have. What do you think needs to be done? Especially in regards to, now like Elizabeth has mentioned, the conversation of policies. Policies affect a lot in everything that we do. So with Dorothy, who has the experience on ground at grassroots level, what do you think needs to be done?
Okay, thank you. At policy level, I would think we need to have more trainings for specialty nurses. This can start from maybe task shifting, say empowering already the existing staffs with, say, fellowships in neonatal nursing, because we might not actually have any nursing training schools or even universities offering neonatal nursing. But at least if we could enroll the existing staffs into fellowship, and they are able to actually gain that skills and experience, but also there is need to actually have equal distribution of these specialty nurses who actually train, so that people who are in the hard to reach areas, who are usually underserved and cannot actually have access to specialized care, could actually be able to find these nurses and midwives who have the specialty trainings, and this could help in actually identifying early diagnosis and management, and this would help prevent complications. And on the other hand, we also, there is need to have these nurses who train retained because some of them have actually trained, but then they are not into the health system structures in terms of recruitment. So all this comes around policy to say maybe we need to advocate for more specialty nurses in the staffing norms, so that at least we have so many specialists coming on board. So all this would help really in improving the outcomes of patients and also preventing complications in the end.
Right. And when we speak policies, what is known for Uganda mostly is policies are made more by people who are not who do not have the experience of that particular subject. And I'll stay with you, Dorothy, because you have the on grassroots experience. What would you say? The fact that nursing is majorly filled by women, how would you advise women should be a part on the decision-making tables? How best can women be invited to sit at the tables while making these decisions, because they affect policy ultimately?
At present, we are actually represented. We have the Nurses Union, we have the Uganda Nurses and Midwifery Council, at the Ministry of Health, we have commissioners in nursing. So I'm very sure we have some representation.
Yes.
But of course, a lot is being done, and we've had some progress made, really. We've had nurses train in critical care, and they've offered scholarships. It's just that not all the specialists have really been tackled, but at least we've been represented, and we know with more people coming on board and support maybe from other partners, we will achieve what we really need to achieve.
Right.
Yeah.
Now I'll come to Professor Laura with your experience from the UK, where you operate, and all over the world, with your qualifications, with your honors that you've been given by King Charles. You have a vast experience. And what would you advise that Uganda needs to do to improve the nursing and midwifery sector?
I think first of all I wanted to say that this week for me in Uganda has been fabulous. I have to also say to all my Ugandan now friends, this is the first African country I visited in my 44 years. So now for the rest of Africa, this is the benchmark.
Benchmark, yes.
Uganda is setting the line now for everybody else wherever I go. And one of the things that's really impressed me about being here with the nurses and midwives is their commitment and their devotion to the duty. I think when I think about policy, because that's something I've done a lot of, as you say, nationally and internationally,
Sure.
Policy is what allows us to do what we do. Without policy, there is no framework for health. It shapes the scope of our practice, and therefore it shapes the opportunities that people have in the community. So I think the politicians, and you do have politicians who have nursing and midwifery and health backgrounds, they're really crucial to the discussions that take place. But I think one of the things that we do have to do in Uganda is recognise the range and scope. The midwives are there at the best times of people's lives, at the beginning where there's birth, and at the worst time of people's life. We see the whole of life from start to finish.
True.
So the policy and the practice, the education, the research of Uganda has to speak for Uganda, to Ugandan people. Absolutely.
Wow, profound. And when you said that nurses are there to see the beginning and the end, day in, day out, one would wonder, do you ever rest? Because I mean, do you have lives outside of this? Because every day someone dies, every day someone is sick, every day someone is born, every day something is happening, and that is demanding.
Yes, our jobs are never finished.
Yes.
We're not working in a place where my job is to make 10 boxes a day, and when my 10 boxes are done, I'm done.
Yeah.
Tomorrow, it starts again. Every moment of every day, life is happening. I think what's really important, and this is really important for nurses, for midwives, and for anyone who does, particularly in public service, is to find the time to pause. Because if we all fall down because we're exhausted, there's no one to take up the slack. So yes, I mean, I'm a mother, I'm a grandmother,
Wow. Yes.
all those things, and it's just important that we do that and we rest and that we enjoy ourselves.
Wow.
And we learn to balance.
True. Now, let's start to bring this conversation to a close, and I'll start with you, Elizabeth. Share tips on how best we can maintain our health.
Self-care, very important, and I'm passionate about that, so thank you very much. I think Professor Laura has actually touched on it, the pausing. We saw how demanding working in COVID-19 was, and how some of our colleagues are still suffering the long-term effects of the pandemic.
Sure.
So it's very important to listen to your body. I say I look at this question in three parts. So we have a body, we have a mind, and we have a spirit. With our body, we are very good at making sure we look after it. I've brushed my teeth, I've done my hair, we're all dressed up.
Yes.
And for the body parts, we are very good at doing that. With our souls, if those who love, to worship, you go to your places of worship, to fellowship with others, play jazz music, Afro beats, whatever that takes your soul to a higher place and makes you feel good. But however, that was the spirit. However, with our soul, which is in our mind, we really don't remember to look after our soul. So it's very important to recognize I'm feeling stressed today, so I'm shutting off. I'm having time off. I had a very difficult case yesterday, maybe a patient, a mom. I don't think I can go back into that stressful situation. Take time out. But what we do is drive ourselves back into the stressful situation, which is not healthy at all.
Right.
And then we have the issues of burnout.
Right.
So looking after your body, mind, and soul is very important. They are all equally important.
Right. Dorothy, what are your tips?
Wow. One of the tips that I cannot leave out is going for regular health checkups. Personally, I am passionate about providing cervical screening services, and most women don't go to the facility until they start getting these bad symptoms and when the condition is really worse. So we all know that every woman above 25 years should actually be having a cervical screening every 3 years, but most of them don't actually go in. So I would really encourage people to go out for screening even when they feel fine. This goes to everyone so that actually they can be able to live healthy and seek help when it's still early.
Right. Professor Laura, what are your tips?
I would actually like to speak to the men, okay, because we're in a female profession,
yes,
and often in many countries women have screening, they have checks for this, we have more things in our lives that bring us to medical attention, but not so for the men. Across the world, in every country, again, irrespective, pure or rich, men die earlier than women. It's one of the few areas on gender where actually men come out worse. So I'm speaking to the men here because what we know is men are more likely to get sick quicker, they are more likely not to stick to the treatment that they're given, and they're more likely to turn up late. And so those two things, not sticking to the treatment and not turning up for help until it's too late, are the #1 causes of why men die earlier. So to the men out there, just as my colleague here says, prevention and check. Sometimes the cultures that we live in make it much harder for men to admit, my spirit, my body, my soul is not at peace. And so my tip here is to the men, take care of yourselves. We need you, and we need you to be well in this space.
Right. Thank you so much, ladies. I've been speaking with Dorothy Gashuga, Elizabeth Pearson, and Professor Laura Serrant, and we've been commemorating the International Midwives and Nurses Week. That was started on the 5th of May through into the whole week. Thank you so much for being on the show. Good morning, Uganda continues. It's a Friday, and it's jam-packed. Thank you.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala. This is Good Morning Uganda.
In a nation hungry for truth, a world where every story matters, there exists a beacon of trust and reliability. For decades, They've been our voice and our window to the world, holding the mirror of our history. With 4 TV stations and 11 radio channels spanning 27 languages, they stand as guardians of information, defenders of truth. With Mascari Heritage Advantage, they uphold every citizen's right to reliable and free information. Their archived stories shaped our past and illuminate our present. Yet now, as new challenges arise and the world evolves, their mission faces its greatest test yet. Be part of our journey and let's navigate the unknown, uncover the untold, and safeguard our future together. Tune into your public broadcaster, for it is the intersection of trust and truth.